All right, this is it. The radar traits video for the RSC Radar Bot. All other information is in that other video that I made. That's more of just like a tutorial and how to use it. This is the trait system and basically kind of like the in-depth what the bot is actually about. Not gonna lie, I was kind of half asleep for the other video and was just kind of droning on about how to use it. I'm half asleep right now too, but I'm at least more excited about this video because this was the whole kind of purpose of the bot. It took so long to actually like come out with this video because I was waiting until it was like absolutely 100% complete to do so. And with the way the sheets are now set up this season and the way I've set the bot up to just run full time and restart itself and save the sheets in its memory, I don't have to interact with it anymore. All I'll have to do is update it for each season and it'll be smooth sailing from here on out. Looking back, actually, this is what it looked like a year ago when I first came out with it. And back then I was like, wow, this is so tough. This looks so good. And it looks like complete crap compared to what I've turned it into over the course of the past year from updating it every once in a while. So I think this is a good stopping point for that. There's really nothing else I can think to add to it that I'm really invested in adding that's still inside of the scope of what I wanted it to be originally. But let's go ahead and get right into it, and I will finally explain everything after it's been just about 1 year. So, going into the methodology and what it's supposed to do, this originally started as a school project. I was kind of forced into making this at first because it was like a project for a 300 level class, and they said use Python libraries to take a big data set and turn it into some like find a way to display it and turn it into something useful. And so I did the display thing with this radar graph using the 10 main stats that are tracked in IDR and SPV, and the make it into something useful. That's how I kind of got the idea to make the like trait system to show stats that players have a certain like affinity for or strong suit, and I've kind of compounded that and added to it over the course of the last year. So, an attribute as far as this bot goes is any stat that a player is in the top 25% for, or quantile, we'll call them quantiles, and that's a hard cutoff. When checking for an attribute, it takes players who have played for the first half of the season 4 games, second half of the season 8 games to get rid of any like extreme outliers because I'm sure people would be mm, less than happy to put up a solid number of like say goals, and then like over the course of a season they say they've played like 30 games, and then a guy who's played like one averages like 4 goals a game because he scored 4 goals in the one game and kicks them out of the top quantile. It, you have to play a certain number of games to actually be compared to within the tier, but it's a hard cutoff. It's the top 25% for any stat, and you will be granted an attribute for it down here. So right here we've got X Nunya Biden 3SS. We can see he's got a very high score for assists per game, so he gets the playmaker attribute. Very high number of demos. He just reaches the fourth quantile, so he's got the violent attribute. Now, how they're plotted and how they're actually assigned the attributes is very slightly different. Like 99% of the time, it's going to match up on here if it crosses this line, the 75% line, you'll get the attribute for it. But for some stats, namely the demos inflicted, demos taken, they are actually like take the scores taken turned into a Z score, which basically determines how far away from the mean it is. You can look more into Z scores if you'd like, but then it turns that Z score into a percentile and then plots it. And it's extremely accurate, but there are very few cases where like Sometimes you'll be just outside of the 75% mark, depending on your tier and what the distribution is for the scores there. And you'll still be in the top 25% for that hard cutoff. So all attributes and traits are independent of your RPV score. Like there's no set RPV score you or like threshold you have to reach to get a certain trait or any certain trait you have to have that will magically get you up to a certain number. But they do have a very high correlation. As you go into higher RPV ranges, you see more traits on players, which checks out as your RPV increases. The surface area that you take up in here is supposed to as well, and that I mean it checks out. You know, the more you do of any of these, the higher your RPV is going to be. But it's a bit less like exact now to just like a bigger surface area means higher RPV because I've added demos taken and demos inflicted into there, which aren't included in either calculation. And then saves. Uh, the formula still use saves for the chart. I wanted to use saves per goal against because someone recommended it in a thread, and it seems like a more accurate way to like gauge the usefulness of a player's saves. Like it's relative to the type of defense their team is playing and whether or not they're actually supposed to be putting up a lot of saves. Because if you're attacking all the time, I would feel bad just like leaving somebody with nothing here because they don't have a chance to save the ball. But yeah, so now like with those the way they are, we have all sorts of different shapes in here now. Case in point, I was looking through a bunch of the charts and we literally have Patrick Star on Ozempic. That's pretty. I've never seen anything like this. Congratulations, you win the most unique shape award of all time. Now, with that being said, you know, your RPV increasing with more surface area, it definitely the offensive stats hold a lot more weight than the defensive ones do. You can see here, this is me and my teammate Monkey. He has a way bigger polygon than I do. At this point, I'd played 2 games and I conceded 5 goals in each game. But yeah, the more offense you do, that's going to be a much bigger boost to your RPV than having a lot of stuff over here. Now, this is still like useful and you still need it to have a high RPV score. It goes into it a lot, but it's weighted way less, which checks out because most of the defense is stats against, and there's no real way to determine where a player falls in the mix for all of these, what exactly they're doing on defense to earn this score, because it's all kind of a team effort. Ball chasing doesn't track stuff like cleared balls or even stuff on offense like centered balls. So that leaves a bit of guesswork in there, which I think works perfectly for RPV because it's also used to determine a player's sort of skill level and what tier they end up playing in. So if it's kind of ambiguous, you don't want to put too much weight on it. Stuff over here is like siphoned down to one player. These are all correlating to only a single individual. And granted, a lot of this stuff comes from teams and how they play, but it's the best we have to go off of in terms of a player's individual contributions. So here we have the trait tiers. So we've already established that an attribute is top 25% for a stat, and from there it you kind of go up this list, and the higher up you go, the more that particular trait correlates to like a strength in a certain area of play, whether that be offense or defense or somewhere in between. So for an attribute to become a trait, you have to have the attribute, you know, be in the top 25% there, and the associated accolade for it. So it gets upgraded to a trait. Say if you're like top quantile for goals per game and top quantile for hat tricks as well, because that kind of differentiates. Like, you could have a good average for goals, but hat tricks are something you have to do consistently over the course of the season because that's a set number that stacks up. You have to do it multiple times. It's not based on an average. That's one way that a attribute can become a trait. And for defense, since there's no accolades for like stats against, I've kind of tried to associate different ones that kind of fall in the same boat. Like if you have both of those attributes, they will combine and become a trait. Attributes are just like normal text. They'll be a trait if they're in bold. And then from that, you just jump up to compound traits. It's just a combination of multiple traits. It's really close to the top one, but not quite there. Um, it's just showing like an even stronger performance in a certain area of gameplay. And then finally, you have like a comprehensive trait, which means a player excels in a certain area of gameplay. And we're about to get into all of these, every single one, what the names are and what they mean. All right, so here we have four players that are all within one RPV of each other. Granted, that's in different tiers, but this is the basically four types of cards that it's possible to have. So, firstly, if you don't have any attributes, the border for the card and the outline of the chart, outline of your shape right here, it's just black by default. If you have any attributes, it's going to match up with your RPV range color. So this is the middle range, so it's silver and everything's silver. And then if you have traits, if you have any, it'll be the same like color scheme as this one, silver, but it'll be like a shiny background to indicate that you have a trait. And that's for traits and compound traits. Compound traits don't change anything about the background. They, for like color scheme purposes, they serve the same as a normal trait. And then finally, it's really obvious if you have a comprehensive trait because you will have a background based on what comprehensive trait you have. And you'll have this kind of like ace card thing in your name, and it'll have like the spade from the card down here around the comprehensive trait. So it's like the most obvious thing about the whole trait deal. All right, this is it. The part where we finally go through every single trait. I will touch on every single one and how all of the attributes lead up into the comprehensive traits and these up here. Basically, there's four comprehensive traits that you can get, and if you end up getting the very top one up here, it's basically like if you're the CEO of unemployment, it's kind of like being the avatar of RSC, master of all four of these elements. But we will go down each specific pathway that leads to each of these comprehensive traits. So one thing to make clear, because this whatever website I used to make this schizo-looking diagram, it wouldn't let me make the letters bold for whatever reason. I'm not stupid. I promise. I tried. It only lets me make the borders bold for whatever reason. So for the distinction purposes, all of the ones that have like the thin outline, those are the attributes. Anything with a bold outline, that's that's the traits. The compound traits are just these four that have black interiors, and then the comprehensive traits are these ones up here. So yeah, and then you have Unk, which is 10 plus seasons played. It I just added that for no reason. It doesn't it doesn't like combine with anything to give you any higher level trait. It just shows that you're old. All right, starting out, we are going to look at the defensive pathway here, which is really the most complicated one because there's a lot of just like combinations of stuff and it's kind of all stacked on top of each other. Like I was talking about earlier with combining the stats against ones because they don't have any accolades that go with them. So for any of these that you have down here, you have dominant, which is points against per game. You have low points against per game conceded. It used to be dominator, but that was a little too freaky. So I think dominant is a much nicer word. You are pretty dominant if you do not let the other team score on you, or like score a whole lot of points on you. And then over here we've got bouncer for assists against per game. Just because I was thinking like I don't know like what descriptor I would put for assist against per game. I don't know what all like I could exactly say constitutes assists against per game because it has to be based off of the goals you concede. I would assume it's you're conceding a lot of solo plays or like counterattack goals that don't have any assists for them because there's a long time in between touches from the other team's players. So you're probably not letting them into your half a whole lot. Kind of like how bouncers don't let people into the club. And I don't know, your side of the field is the club. I had the hardest time with this one. Disruptor is just shots against per game. You're disrupting their attack before they have an opportunity to shoot. That one's pretty simple. And then you have savior over here for saves per goal against. And up here, there's the trait version of it, which is if you have the actual savior's accolade, a high amount of those. And for any of these that have like just a regular attribute and then a trait version, both of those still like combine the exact same. It doesn't matter which one you have. But for any of these four down here, we'll start with these two. These two are like very closely linked. They're almost always within the same quantile of each other, and that really goes for a lot of that defensive curve. These are all kind of interlinked, but these two the most. So if you have both of them, you get upgraded to the sentinel trait, which is essentially stopping attacks like before a shot happens, like keeping the other team away from your goal as far as players go and the ball. Then you have dominant over here, which is points against per game, and it comes into play over here, but we'll only look at it using this for now. And then you have like savior. You're making a lot of saves compared to the amount of goals that you concede. So the saves that you're making are actually like important. They are preventing goals. Like if you save the ball and it goes spills out to somebody and they just score on you, that's not super useful. So it keeps this like even. You get a save, but your goals against goes up. This prioritizes saves that end up protecting the goal in most cases. It has a much higher correlation to win percentage than just normal saves. Okay, so for all of these, whether it's you have any of these, none of them can get upgraded to any of these traits unless you also have Fortress, which is goals against per game, because that's really the only measure that we can take from these stats for how well any of these are actually stopping the other team from scoring. Because nobody really cares about any of this if they're still able to like bang in goals on you. But most of the time, you have some of these attributes going for you. This should be pretty close to the top quantile. So, and that kind of determines what defense style you have right here. And so, if you have Fortress and Savior, those combine into Shield. It means, yeah, you're saving a lot of shots, and it is actually hard to score on you. If you have Sentinel and Fortress, you have the castle defense right there. Because you know you can't attack the people inside the castle if you can't get inside the castle, and they're kind of putting up walls figuratively to stop you from getting into their half and making any offensive plays. And then finally, you've got like points against per game and goals against per game that combine for like the warden, because they're not scoring on you and you're not allowing them to get a whole lot of points. You're kind of most likely, you know, trapping them and not letting them do what they want during the game. I don't know. There's only so many defensive words that you can like come up with, and like half of them are medieval. But if you have any of these right here, you can have any combination of two of them. You could have these two, you could have these two, you could have these two right here. As long as you have any two of these, you get upgraded to the Guardian compound trait, which means you are doing multiple things to keep the other team away from scoring goals. And once you're at this point, all you have to do to get the comprehensive trait here is just do anything else that doesn't involve defense. Like any of these, you just have to have one other like attribute that's offense or like cycles, which I guess involves saves, which you might already have. And that's really just to kind of make a bit of a threshold to get the attribute, because theoretically you could have all four of these down here and never touch the ball in a game. Like, I don't think that would ever happen. And I'm sorry, Medic Mac. I'm not like trying to dog on you because obviously he's doing stuff during the games, but like it could be close to this shape where you like max all of these out without ever touching the ball. If your teammates are just good enough that they can 2v3 the whole time, you know, it's just to kind of like ensure that a player that has a comprehensive trait is somebody that you need to be worried about, because they're actually capable of playing defense. And another attribute kind of cements that that's not their only focus. They're not just like sitting around doing nothing, waiting for their teammates to kind of come and bail them out. So you get any of these, you do one thing on the other half of the field, and boom, you get the adamantine trait. And I mean, for all of these comprehensive traits, I just once I got to this point, I was like, I'm gonna just use a big word with a lot of syllables. Adamantine just it's supposed to mean like really strong. And if you have it, you're playing really strong defense. And usually, what we'll see here, it's got that red background. It's a big curve out here on the top left of the card. And sometimes, if you don't have that exact curve, you'll have something similar, maybe a gap in between like these two if you don't have them. But if you have the saves per goal against and points against and goals against in your favor, you don't need these two right here. But usually you have a pretty big curve, something like that, on the outside of the card. All right, jumping all the way over here to this side, we have the offensive route, and it's a lot simpler than the kind of stacking we do with defense, because like these three, it doesn't matter if you have the trait for them. We've got engine for points per game because, you're you're like making a lot of stuff happen, racking up points. And if you have a high number of MVPs as well, for that accolade, you get the star trait. Playmaker, self-explanatory. Striker, self-explanatory. They have their trait versions with the accolades up here. You've got cannon for shots per game and persistent for saves against per game. And it's persistent because it's like saves against per game is a team stat. So anybody that takes a shot on your team that gets saved, that goes up for everybody. So usually players that have a high saves against per game, their team is forcing a lot of shots, meaning that there is a much higher chance of this player being in the rotation near your net and making some type of play. Um, and really, all you need to know about like getting the Colossus trait, which is the comprehensive offensive trait, is you have to have these three. You 100% have to have these three. That's kind of the like trident thing. A lot of players either like specialize, they'll do a lot of one or the other, which that's totally okay. A lot of players specialize in doing one thing, but for it to be like comprehensive on all of offense, you have to have all three of these two combined into the catalyst um, compound trait. And usually, if you have that, you have a lot of shots per game because a lot of shots do end up turning into assists, if not goals. You have to have all three of those, and then you either have to have persistent as well, which that combined with the shots per game will be the dynamo trait right here. Because, I mean, if you have it by itself, if you don't have any of like this other stuff, but you do have these two, it's just high saves against per game, and this player is a big proponent of that because of the shots they're putting on net. You either have this or you have high points per game, and these three down here combined with either one points per game or dynamo right here, and boom, you've got Colossus. And that's methodology behind that is you either do enough of these to straight up like lift your points into the top quantile. That's usually the case. If you're just kind of on the edge of the top quantile for all of them, and you have this too, I think that means your team plays close enough to the other team's net to where someone who does all of these is a big enough threat to get that comprehensive trait. We've got a couple examples of it. Number one being, guess who? Oh, yeah, it's me. Ah, this is probably only going to last another 15 hours until I have to play again, but it's as good of an example as any. So yeah, it's basically like the stuff over here, but it's the top right of the graph. It's all of these right over here showing like just like a presence for doing anything on offense, shooting, assisting, goals, um, and a high enough proficiency for that to get a high amount of points. Or it'll be like, let me see, like this, where it's not maxed out, so points per game isn't quite as high, but they're always going to be a pretty big threat because of the amount of saves that their team is forcing. And that is how you get Colossus. All right. And now we're going to look at the Leviathan route. So, really, all you need to know to get this started is that you absolutely have to have uh, the attributes for points per game and points against per game. A lot of hard to play no matter what you're doing. They do enough on offense and on defense to where they may not have everything in one area to get one of the two comprehensive traits, but they have so many points from a conglomeration of both that they still kind of deserve to get like recognized. Like it's somewhere in between. It's doing kind of everything, being versatile. That's what this one's mainly about. So points per game, points against, they do play into each of these, but as we just saw, they're not a cemented requirement to get either of them. You can get both of these comprehensive traits without them. So if you have both of them, you immediately get this storm compound trait because I don't know. I called it storm because it's like I thought about like a tornado. This player probably just keeps like hitting you. They're very like overwhelming kind of. And then from there, there's two ways to get to Leviathan. Usually, if you have this, you're pretty close. You either have a high number of cycles, your top quantile for cycles. That's the versatile attribute. Man, I'm so tired. Versatile attribute right there. So usually that comes about from players who play consistently and fill out these metrics on a consistent basis enough to get into the top for cycles over the course of the season. And then all you have to do once you have a high number of cycles is have one attribute for one of the three stats that goes into having a cycle. And that's all of these ones that are here in the pale purple. So you don't have to like the other route is jackpot, which is independent of this. You don't have to have the points or points against to have the jackpot trait, but that's averaging all three of these at the same time for their attributes. Your top quantile for goals, assists, and saves. You're just doing everything that racks up a bunch of points. So if you have this and this, that's all you need to get the Leviathan trait. Or you have this, you put up a lot of cycles, you can, whoops, you can do like any of these things when you're like called to it, but there's only one of them that you have to like show proficiency in. And usually players go this route just because you're doing at least one of these consistently enough to keep your points per game pretty high. And then boom, you've got Leviathan right there. Leviathan just means really big, I think. Well, so does Colossus, but I made Colossus the offensive one because I was thinking like cold, make it blue, the opposite of defense. Blue, red, and then this one that's kind of in the middle, purple. I think it makes a lot of sense. So the Leviathan card looks just like this. It is purple, and it is always going to have these two, like top two up here in the upper quantile for both of them. Sometimes it'll look like horns if a player is lower in demos taken per game than both of these. But yeah, so as you can see, this is my teammate, and he's doing a lot on offense and defense, but neither is like filled out quite enough to get the comprehensive traits there. But his RPV is still pretty solid. His points against are solid. His points for are solid. They're very high compared to the tier. So, and that's a pretty well-rounded shape. So it just kind of shows a very all-around skilled player right there. And then I think got one more. Boom. So this is my other teammate. My team's loaded. That's why I don't play any games. A very filled out shape. We've got kind of that like horn thing that I was talking about right here. And this is a good way to show that like you can if you have multiple comprehensive traits, it'll show them all. For the big three that correlate to all of the RPV affecting statistics, if you have one and then another, if you have two, it's always going to show Leviathan as the background, and depending on whether or not it's Colossus or Adamantine that you have, that's what's going to show in the middle. So he's got both, uh, really close to just like having all three, but it shows both of them. And then if you have Menace, it's not going to show up on its own as a background, but it's going to affect all of these little like labels right here. But yeah, usually you see a pretty fleshed out shape for Leviathan. Well-rounded players, that's what that is. And then, so yeah, these are like like I said, the big three that play into, you have to get all three of them, not just a combination of two, to achieve unemployed status. And that's it's very rare that that happens. And then lastly, going down here, the menace route, that's just players who are like extremely, I don't know, like I don't want to say like annoying. Like I bet it does get annoying because it revolves around demos and kind of disrupting the other team. So there are a few different traits you can get down here based on a combination of stats. So firstly, we've got we already talked about these two. Violent is attribute for demos inflicted. Demos taken is agile. If you don't get demoed a lot, that's how you get it. If you have both of them, you get the ninja trait because you're sneaky, but you also like are an assassin or something. Violent and persistent means that you get the enforcer trait because your team is getting a lot of shots in on the other half, and you're probably reducing their chance of getting away. You're like kind of enforcing the attack by demoing them and making them like restart and be out of the play for a few seconds. And I've already talked about Dynamo over here. So any combination of these two, if you have Ninja and Enforcer, or Enforcer and Dynamo, or Dynamo and Ninja, if you just have two of them, boom, you automatically get the Menace trait. So, but that requires, like, because both of these link to two of them, you have to have both of these. Demos inflicted, saves against per game, and you can either have shots per game or demos taken per game in your favor as well. But it really revolves around demos and stifling the other team and forcing them back into their own half. And yeah, that's how you get Menace. The card looks like, let me see, let me pull it up. Where is it? Boom. A lot of the time, if it's the ones that are these three, which is that's usually the case. It's a curve on the bottom right, filling these three out right here, and it's this like greenish background type of deal. And then the other one that you'll see a little more rarely is my other teammate, Monkey. Thank goodness I have teammates that are so unique, and I can just use them all in this video. But yeah, here he is. It's demos inflicted, saves against. So a lot of demos, keeping them close to their net, and hard to demo himself. It's hard to throw him off of what he's doing. And that is that. So as far as the big three go that revolve around points, if you get all of them, that's how you get the unemployed overall comprehensive trait, wraps them all into one. Um, it's a player who has very little weakness in their game, according to the stats. You know, stats don't lie; they don't always tell the full story. But according to what we see on here, you know, just about every stat is going to be filled out close to the maximum. And then if you have all three of these, and you have this already, and this will only apply in the case where you're already unemployed. If you have minutes as well, you get promoted to CEO of unemployment, which is every single comprehensive trait, and you have a massive radar like this. I made this and I was like, there's no way anybody gets it. I'll just make it just in case, and then someone did it already. A few people have done it already, so shout out to you guys. But that is what it looks like. That is what it looks like to apparently be perfect. And lastly, there's one more card you can get that doesn't correlate in any way to any of the traits or attributes, and that is this one, which is Hundreds Club card. I don't actually have it. I just it's too early in the season for anybody to have it, so I just made this one to show. It's all it is. It's straight up if you have a combined goals and assist tally above 100, and you get this automatically. If you have anything below the like very top comprehensive trait, it'll just replace those because I feel like it'll be rarer than just about anything else, but it's too early on to tell. I don't know how many people reach that in a season, but that's literally all this is. And that is that as far as every single trait goes. Usually, it's the case where not only do they compound and go up the more you do on each side of the field, but it also goes across the board and they all kind of interlink and play into each other. If you're running it up on offense, you're definitely getting a lot of points, and that's half the battle for this right here. Especially because offensive stats like goals and assists are needed for so many of the requirements here. If you're holding it down on defense and not allowing a lot of goals, well, you're definitely not allowing a lot of assists either. And that's the majority of how your opponents are going to get their points against. So playing good defense gets you this right here, which is going to lead up this way as well. And if you don't have either of these completely like filled out, but you do have this one, you're definitely like more than halfway to getting another one too. You just do a combination of both that gets you the points needed to still get an overarching stat here. So it's all kind of interlinked in a way. And then going on, this is I just decided this would be interesting to take a look at rarity and RPV distribution. So we're on match day. This was as of match day 9. So this is every single player that has played at least 8 games this season. So 722 players. As far as the 4 comprehensive traits go, not looking at the ones that combine them, Menace is definitely the rarest. It is a very unique play style. Uh, Only 3% of players have it. Average RPV is a little lower than the rest of them because, it doesn't, it's saves against and demos, neither of which play a huge role in your RPV, and those are the 2 that are required for it. Adamantine, this one is the most held among players. Almost 9% of players have it. Average RPV is 70 for it, a little lower than these, but not too much lower. And that's kind of what I was expecting because, like we were talking about earlier, defensive stats don't play into your singular RPV score quite as much as ones that favor high goals or assists. Colossus, 4% of players have, and Leviathan, 6%. Both of them have a really similar average RPV. The the maxes are really high, but there's really no like super high range you have to get into RPV wise to get any of these. So it's not super dependent on any of them, but you do see as players go higher up into the top echelons of RPV, it's a lot more common and it drives that average up. Finally, we got 9 unemployed players in the league right now. Only 1.25% of players have it. Average RPV there is like almost 10 points higher than any of these down here, which checks out because they're doing everything. They're really balling. And then the CEO of unemployment, 3 players, that's less than 0.5%. Average RPV is actually a little lower, which is not surprising at all because it's just this right here, but with Menace, which also doesn't play into it at all. but they're definitely like really close as far as their high range, low ranges, and averages go. But these players also somehow find the time in the middle of doing everything to demo you as well. Finally, looking at the like positional stats, they're divided pretty evenly, as I would assume they would be. 31%, 31%, 22% for defense, and goalie is almost 15%. So it's basically like 36% in the defensive third. It's just these ones are sectioned off into goalie because they do make a lot of saves. And we see the RPV increase by like about 7 points per like third of the field you move up, which makes sense. You're getting a lot more points and shots and goals and RPV increasing stats in the further up the field you're able to play. But um, a very high like range. Everybody like plays differently depending on like where they want to sit in their rotation. So there's no like RPV threshold at all for any of these. And only one that's kind of different on defense is goalie. They are 6 RPV points higher than defense. But that's just probably because they're the defenders that also have a lot of saves going for them as well in the stats. All right, and lastly, this is the every single player in the data set as of match week 9, right here, all 722 of them. So going from the bottom and just looking at traits here, not attributes, because it's kind of hard to tell. It's easier to tell like ones with traits. So strong suits for any given stat. So going from the bottom, when you're in the bronze range, they're a little fewer and far between, but there's plenty in there. Silver range in the middle is kind of half and half, and that's where we start seeing a lot of the defensive and menace traits um, being sprinkled in. And you finally get up to the top end. At this point, once you hit gold, the majority of players as you go up have at least one trait. I think 56 might be this guy. 66 actually. I think that's the highest. No, no, no. There's players higher that don't have any traits, but they have attributes. I think 56 was the max without any attributes at all. But yeah, once you get to a certain point, you can bet on like 90% of the players having at least one trait, and you start seeing a lot more of really all of the three main RPV comprehensive ones. You'll start seeing more Leviathans, one or two Colossi, which you get more of those towards the top. And then once you're at the top and you're in the platinum range, the majority of players have at least one or two of the comprehensive traits. And then once you're at the top, there's a very high chance that you've got players with all of them. And here we've got the few that have all of them and the menace as well. But really, that checks out as far as what I wanted the bot to do. You know, kind of reflect areas of gameplay as they correlate to RPV, and you see certain like mastery more as you get into players with higher RPV ranges more, and that's that's really all I wanted to do was kind of like expand on the RPV scores and what goes into it per player, and that's one of the things that I really like about it is, you know, there's no requirements for RPV or likewise for the traits to get one or the other. It just reflects what earned that score, and you have plenty of players up here. Although most of them have a lot of the comprehensive traits, there's plenty that don't. There's plenty of players that have their own like strong suit that just gets them a high RPV score because they're so proficient in that. Like this person, a lot of points, a lot of goals, a lot of shots, just pure shooter, and they do get a lot of assists in the mix, probably as a result of the shots. Uh, See that a decent bit over here um, with the low assists, but very high shots and goals and points. Trying to see what else we can find. This guy, it's kind of the opposite. Lower for all of these, like kind of in the middle, but a lot of assists and a lot of defense being played and very few shots taken. So there's so many different like conglomerations of traits that either can result in a comprehensive thing with a big curve on the side or something kind of like that, which is close to a lot of stuff, not quite there, but you can obviously see from these like why these players have such high scores. And that's the end. Hopefully by watching this video, I don't know how good I explained it, but like I give it like a 50% chance that hopefully watching this whole thing helps you understand the trait system better. Um, yeah, wow. This is like once I realized that the bot could run on its own for, weeks at a time now, and that it had all the features that I wanted, I got straight to making this. It's like it's 2:30 in the morning. I'm ready to like wrap this whole thing up and go back to my true calling of being a mid-veteran player. But over the past year working on it, it's been really, really neat to work on and see people using it and like kind of learn from that because that's really how I've learned to fix most of the bugs is from like people using it and like letting me know and giving me feedback. So shout out to you guys. Thank you for using it and letting me know when stuff went haywire. I think we've just about finally managed to fix it all. Um, and that is because of you guys. I did not know how to like test every name at once when I first came out with it. So it was just I put it out there, and if something went wrong, people would let me know, and I took forever to respond. I forgot that people were DMing me. My bad. But yeah, it's set now. This is what it's going to be for the rest of time. There's maybe stuff that could be added on in the future now with the extra information in the sheets, but I realized that for what I wanted it to do, correlating to RPV, I'd completed that purpose. It runs on its own now. There's no more updates to add to it. So that's why I finally got around to making this video. Um, Shout out to RSC staff, whoever incorporated it in the bot channel. I appreciate you. I don't know who did it, but uh, that was very nice to find out. So thank you for that. I had kind of worked. I didn't really like collaborate with anybody on it because my timeline has been kind of weird. I just woke up one day and it was in there, so I'm glad that it's in and it's been helpful or maybe just neat for players to use and kind of track their stats across the seasons. Let's see. Shout out to Jay for having a really short name. Because every time I would like test commands, I mean, if stuff was crashing, I would have to test stuff like 10 times over. He really probably saved a few months before I get arthritis just by having a short name. I could just test it by typing in the letter J. That was really, really helpful during the testing out process whenever I'd had to test stuff out. And yeah, I'm going straight to sleep. I finally understand how we got computers and phones and applications. It's because once you realize that you can code something, it just pisses you off until you actually complete coding it. Like it weighs on your mind until you finish it. And I am finally about to get all of that headspace back. Good night, RSC.